Shalom, shalom. It's your brother Darnall, here with the brother Azrael. Um, Hope you guys had a good week. If not, it's time to hit that reset button. The Shabbat is rolling in, the Sabbath day, the day of rest. Time to shake off those webs of the previous week, man, and look forward to starting afresh. For us, we will be not only resetting right for the week, but really resetting for the year to come, right? As our Passover is going to be coming in tomorrow, or on the Sabbath, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, right? I entitled this video Passover Prelims, right? Passover preliminary. um the actual Passover lesson will be tomorrow, right? This video is going to serve kind of as a light-hearted discussion as we dive into previous revelations that we've came across, right? Uh, the beautiful thing about being in this truth is that every year you should be growing, every year knowledge should be increasing. And for us over here, man, that's what takes place. We constantly examine the scriptures. We constantly are trying to get it right. And the more we do, man, right? I will say this: the more we do, the more sense this Bible makes. And the like Yahushua or Christ, right? Yeshua, however you want to acknowledge him, Yeshaya, however you want to acknowledge him, like he says, right? His burden that he ushers out, his yoke is easy. So when he came, man, he did away with a lot of things that were burdensome, and that's what we're finding as knowledge increases, is that this truth, man, this Bible, is actually doable, right? I mean, we knew that from the jump, but it's being revealed more doable than we ever could imagine, and it just makes more sense and more sense as we grow. It's the beautiful thing about having like-minded brothers, right, that go to the drawing board, not just for 1 year to perpetuate us for the future, but we go to the drawing board every year. You know what I'm saying? Because we know we've been in a sleeping state for the majority of our lives. And so every year, man, we're striving to try to uncode this Bible and try to uncode certain things and make sure we get them right. That's all we're trying to do. And so we've came to some revelations. We're going to share those with you guys today. Like I said, it's not going to be nothing too in depth, right? Certain things that we're might be talking about might be a little bit controversial, but we'll do more in-depth videos on those things. This is just a Passover prelim discussion and some things that we found, right? But first and foremost, we want to give all honor and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We do so by way of his son, right, who's an instrument of salvation for the nation, right? The Holy Lamb, right? First, man, let's dive into, right, the Passover, why we keep it, right? What it's a memorial of. We're gonna jump into what we're gonna call in this lesson the live action Passover. Where can we find the live action Passover? It's in the book of Exodus, right? That's where you find the live action Passover, right? What's that? It's gonna be Exodus 12. What verse? We're gonna start out. Yeah, we can start from the top, right? So Exodus 12 is where you can find the live action Passover. We're gonna go through this, and then we're gonna share some things as we go, right? Some things that you guys might know, some things that you guys might haven't considered yet, right? But it should be a very informative lesson. And I think we're moving in the right direction, right? So this is Exodus 12. We'll start at verse 1.
Book of Exodus, chapter 12 and verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb.
Right. So right now, we see that they're giving instruction. Not only they're getting instruction, they're getting a foundation. The foundation is, hey, look, right? This is really the start of their calendar. This is the first time they ever acknowledge a calendar being a part of their culture. And he's saying this month will be the beginning of your months, right? Um, and when you examine that, right, you have to take it for what it is. Again,
Salakia too. I wanted to say that also another point is this is the first calendar for them, right? A lot of people like to pride on well, the laws of Kemet and Kemet, and Egypt is the oldest society. There's older societies than being an Israelite, and Egypt might have had a calendar, and our people, when they were living in Egypt, may have been going with the calendar in Egypt, but this is the first time God is making known to them their year. So this is them coming into their own system, their own calendar, their own cycle, right? So they could have been coming from a cycle, right? Egypt could have had a older calendar, right? But that doesn't make it right to follow just because it's older, right? God literally is speaking to them here. And
right,
God say this is the beginning of your month. It doesn't matter what any other calendar says, right? This is the beginning of your month.
right. Body point, right? One thing I want to point out here is this, right? Let's read verse 2 and 3 one more time, right?
Verse 2, Exodus 12 and 2. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
Right. And so I'm being in it's right to assume that he's saying this as the month issues in, as it's probably the first of the month, right? How do we know that? Let's read verse 3.
Verse 3, speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house.
So he's letting them know. So on the 10th day of this month, this is going to be your first month. On the 10th day of this month, this is what's going to take place, right? All of y'all are going to get a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb of an house, right? And it's important to understand that they are in Egypt at this time, right? Verse number 4. So he's just letting them know, right? This is going to be the first month, and this is what I want you to do on the 10th day of this month, right? Keep reading.
Verse 4, and if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb.
Right. So he's just making sure everybody can get a piece of this lamb, right? Again, this is the live action Passover, right? So it's imperative that everybody is getting a piece of this lamb, right? Keep reading.
Verse 5, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats.
Right. So you can have a sheep or you can have a goat, right? Even dating back to the live action Passover. Keep reading.
Verse 6, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening.
Right. So you're gonna kill it in the evening. You're gonna keep it up until the 14th day, talking about this lamb, meaning you're gonna set it apart, right? It's got to be holy, which holy means what? Set apart. You're gonna set it apart until the 14th day, right? And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening, right? Keep reading.
Verse 7, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door post of the house, wherein they shall eat it.
Right. So this is where you get striking the blood that you kill of the lamb and putting it on the door post, right? Keep in mind, they are killing it where? They're killing it in Egypt in the live action Passover, right? Keep reading.
Verse 8, and they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread.
So they should eat it that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, right? With bitter herbs, they shall eat it, right? They should eat it in that night. Keep reading.
Verse 9, eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire his head with his legs and with the purtenance thereof.
So it should be a little, I ain't gonna lie, man. Their lamb, it was supposed to be dry. You know what I'm saying? Cooked all the way through. You see what I'm saying? It shouldn't be raw or sodden, right? Not with water, no nothing. So it should have been dry. Right? Keep reading.
Verse 10, and ye shall let nothing of it remain unto the morning, and that which remaineth of it unto the morning ye shall burn with fire.
Right. So in the morning, you should burn the leftovers with fire. Right? In the morning. So you eat in the night, the morning comes, you burn it with fire. Read verse 11.
Verse 11, and thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover.
It is the Lord's Passover, right? One thing to know is that and this was brought to our attention too, right? I think we've all kind of known this for a minute, but just so you guys know that Passover, right? That can also be associated with the actual lamb. The lamb is also called the Passover, not just a memorial of the Passover, but the lamb itself is called the Passover. So that's why people say prepare the Passover. They're talking about preparing the lamb, right?
Not just the day, but the actual sacrifice.
Right. What does it say? Verse 12.
Verse 12, for I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord.
All right. So why do we so we're about to go to Leviticus 2, right? But why do we celebrate the Passover feast on the 14th day? Right? Because on the 14th day, that's when he sent the death angel and killed all the firstborn, right?
Live action.
Right? When did he kill the firstborn? So he killed them on the 14th day at night, right? And so here's what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna go to Leviticus, right? Trying to make this line up as perfect as it makes sense in our heads, right? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. Right.
I also wanted to make emphasis on what we just read as well. It said the Lord's Passover. That making emphasis on the Lord's Passover. It's not our Passover, right? It's not anybody's Passover. It's the Lord's Passover, right? Keep that in mind as we go through the lesson.
Right. That's important for sure. That's important.
And it was all caps too when it said Lord's.
So Leviticus 23, this is where you're gonna go to find your feast days and things of that nature, right? We're gonna read Leviticus 23. And these are the feast days that we should be keeping, right? Listed in here. So if you need a quick go to the feast days, remember Leviticus 23. We're gonna skip down to and get to the point talking about the Passover, right? Let's start at verse 5, right?
Leviticus 23 and verse 5. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover.
The 14th day of the first month at even, at nighttime, is the Lord's Passover, right? This is the first thing it talks about in Leviticus 23, right? And we're making the distinction from Exodus because Exodus is what? The live action Passover. Leviticus and Deuteronomy started talking about the memorial and the feast day and how we should keep the feast days. Now, right? When we go to Leviticus, this is the first time it talks about the Passover, right? All this is talking about the Sabbath day. Verse 5 is talking about the Passover. One thing I want to bring out, did it say anything about getting a lamb on the 10th day? It did not say anything about getting a lamb on the 10th day, right? Again, this was something that was pertinent to the live action Passover. Why did they get that lamb on the 10th day? Because you got to understand, why did they set it apart, right, until the 14th day? They were making it holy because they were in a unclean place. They were in Egypt, right? So they set it apart to make it holy, right? It had to be without blemish and it had to be separated. It was literally being made holy. That's what holy means, is to be set apart. But in Leviticus, we see here that it is instructed for us to keep the Passover in the 14th day at nighttime. It's the Lord's Passover, the Lord's Passover. Read verse 6 for me.
Verse 6. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread.
All right. So now we're going to get into something, right? We're going to get into something. I think this verse 5 and verse 6 is some of the most controversial chain of events, right, in this truth. A lot of people keep it. So here's what I'll say. So people that keep Sabbath and days in general, sundown to sundown, right? This was a controversial chain of events. And it almost happened to be in everybody's mind, like, it's okay, Passover's on the 14th day and unleavened bread's on the 15th day. But I think the Bible is really saying it starts on the same day, right? And we're here to tell you that's just not the case, right? So for about what would you say, about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, we have abandoned the traditional Israelite sundown to sundown day period, right? And not to get time specific in this video. Like I said, we can do another video getting time specific. But what I will say is the way we keep it is kind of in reverse. So like the traditional Israelite sundown to sundown, you keep it your evening first, and then the morning comes after your. So the evening starts your day and the morning ends your day, right? Or the daytime ends your day, right? For us, what starts our day is the morning time, and then it bleeds into the evening time. A lot like how we operate in today's time, right? And I know a lot of people will say like, oh, y'all, we got to get away from the Gregorian calendar and the white man's day. That's not why. That's not why we're doing this, right? We're doing it because it makes sense, right? And one thing I want to point out is that in the Bible, we just went over in Exodus that he's giving them a new calendar. In the new calendar, yes, he's giving them a new order of months, right? But the days that they were keeping were the same. He never said, oh yeah, switch your morning and your evening, right? They were keeping the same day, right? I want to make that point, and I also want to make this point because it makes the Bible make sense, right? It makes the Bible make sense. So like if we in Exodus, where it says the night of the 14th, he killed all the firstborns, right? He's going to kill everybody that day. That means the next day is not the 14th. The next day would be the 15th, right? So when we read verse 5 and 6, what does it say? It says, in the 14th day of the first month at night, it's the Lord's Passover, and on the 15th day, the same month, is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So what it should look like is on the 14th day, looks like you wake up in the morning, and at evening, you eat the lamb, right? You eat the Passover at night, right? And then when you wake up, anything that you have left over, you burn it. Why? Because it is the next day.
Yeah.
Right? It is the 15th day that starts unleavened bread. Right?
Right,
We're gonna get into that at the moral part, right? So watch this. Watch this. We're gonna actually go back to Exodus 12. Watch this, right? And fun fact, right? We actually, you know, brother's been studying diligently. You know what I'm saying? So before you think we just coming on here winging it, we've been looking into this stuff, right? And I want to say what we're about to go on right now came from an avid traditional sundown to sundown keeper, right? And when this wonderful woman brought this to our attention, it just made what we were thinking even more concrete, right? Let's see here. Where does it say? You shall eat it where they shall eat it. Strike on the door. Roast with fire and let red and herbs. You shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, right? This is very key. This is the 14th night, right? And then it says this on verse number 10. Read verse number 10 for me. This is happening on the 14th night, right? Can you read this out?
Verse 10, and ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning.
Right.
And that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire.
Because the morning is the 15th day. We're going to prove that right now. Watch this, right? Hopefully I can share this. I need to get out of this right here and just share the whole tab. Let me see. I'm going to share the whole tab. Window. Share. Yeah, you can see the whole tab. Cool. Perfect. Let's go to blue letter, right? Now it's Exodus 12 and what? 10? Watch this. Watch this. We probably could just stay in blue letter, to be honest, but we're going to do this. Watch this. 12 and 10. So this is Exodus 12 and 10. Again, it says, and ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire, right? So we're going to examine this. You shall let it, nothing of it, again, this is the 14th day, the 14th night, remain until the morning. The morning, right? What is the morning? Is the morning still the 14th day? You guys let me know, right? Is the morning still the 14th day? We don't think so. This is why, right? Let's go to the definition of morning, right? What does it say? Go ahead and read that for me.
H1239, properly dawn, as the break of day, generally morning, day, early, morning, morrow.
Morrow. What does morrow mean? What does morrow mean? Let's see if it. This is look. So it says in the morning. So after the 14th night, right? After the night of the 14th, when you wake up, anything left you should burn, right? In the morning. Now, many would believe that the morning afterwards would still be the 14th, right? And we're here to tell you it doesn't make sense. And it actually makes sense for it to be the next day, because even in Leviticus, this is where the confusion comes in between the 14th day and the 15th day, right? And why are they so close together, right?
And what happens is people will read the New Testament and say, oh, they're really the same day. It's the same. They're just saying the same day. They're interchangeable. And you can't say they're interchangeable, because when you go to the law in Leviticus 23, like we read, it said one was on the 14th and one was on the 15th. So you don't have, they can't, it's not the same day. It's not the same feast. It's not the same ordinance.
Right. And so this is what, like the brother just said, right? I'm glad he said that, because a lot of people get confused, like, why is these seem like it's happening on the same day? It's not happening on the same day, but it's happening within a few hours, right? I'm not gonna say a couple of hours, but within a few hours. So these actions are back to back. Why are they back to back? Because the night is the end of a day, not the beginning of a day. It's the end of the day. The morning is the beginning of the next day, right? How do we know that? We're looking at the definition of morning, right? We just read the definition. This is the biblical usage, right? Read some of these for me from the top to the bottom, right?
Right. From the top, outline of biblical use: morning, break of day.
So it can mean the break of day, right?
Morning, of an end of night.
This is the end of the night, right? The way we look at it is this is when the transition from the sun is going down, and now the end of the night would be the transition of when the sun is about to rise, right? Keep reading. And it's going to say that in verse in 2, right? I didn't even know it said this, right? Watch this.
Of coming of daylight.
Of coming of daylight. When that, keep reading.
Of coming of sunrise.
Okay, bro, I'm promise you, I didn't read none of these, bro. Right? But we've been doing our study, right? And so it just makes sense, right? Of coming of sunrise. Keep reading number 4.
Of beginning of day.
Right? 5.
Of bright joy after night of distress.
We've been made endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning because why? It's a new day, right? Verse number 2.
Verse 2, morrow.
What does morrow mean?
Next day.
It says what?
Next day.
Next what?
Next day.
14th, then the 15th, next day, right? It says next morning as well, right? But I like that because it says morrow. What does the definition say, right? Morning, morrow. So when we go back, this is the same verse, right? This is the same verse. So when we go back, the night of the 14th, right? And ye shall, let's see. I'm gonna go back to the thing. Read verse 10 real quick, right?
Come on, verse 10. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye
the
shall
next day. So on the 14th night is your Passover. That death angel comes, and that remains of what? Until the morning, the next day, you burn with fire. Why? Because it's no longer the 14th day. It's no longer the Passover anymore. Get rid of it. It's the next day, right?
Right. Can you pull Genesis 1 and 5 while you're in there real quick?
In the blue letter?
Yeah.
You want to go into that right now?
Well, I just want to touch on it real quick.
No, I was gonna make a more in-depth video. I was really
I'm not gonna go into it. I just wanted to touch on it, read it real quick. Just touch on it.
Genesis what?
Genesis 1 and 5.
I mean, it's good. It's good to go into it because I know that's somebody's watching this video and that's their first go-to of, you know what I'm saying, like to try to say what we're saying doesn't make sense, right? I must have misspelled Genesis.
And
in the world, am I tripping? Here we go.
Right. And it says, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Reason why I'm reading this is because a lot of times in the truth, what we do is we see a passage talking about atonement saying evening to evening, right? But we forget from the beginning, what did Christ say to the people that asked him a question? He said, since the beginning, it was not so, right? In the beginning, in Genesis, it says we needed evening and the morning, right? So we cannot neglect the fact that we need the morning as well to count it as the next day.
So, Brother Azrael, you got to kind of back that up, right? Because what you said is kind of on a more advanced level of insight of how we're thinking now, right? First, let's tackle how people read this, right? The reason why they keep their evening before their morning is because in Genesis 1 and 5, evening is listed before morning is listed, right? So they look at this and say, see that the evening and then the morning, right? But I got 2 points to make. One, we all know that in Hebrew, it's written right to left anyway, right? Don't nobody stop and think about that. If that was the case and we actually dove deep and did a deeper study into how this stuff's translated, morning probably is before evening. But nonetheless, right? It says in the evening, in the morning were the first day. How does this work with what we believe? I'm gonna show you, right? So when the evening of one day and the morning of the next day come together, that is ending the whole first day. When the morning of the next day comes to the evening of the first day, that signifies that that first day is over with. So when you read this, it says, and God called the light day and
That's
the darkness
daytime.
night. And the evening of the first day, when it meets the morrow or the morning or the next day, right? That signifies the end of the first day, right? And then when you see this morning, the next day, it's beginning the second day.
Right. If I could say something too, Genesis 1 and 5, it says it really plain, but we kind of look over it because you made good points about the right to left thing, but this really puts it in order. It says, when you look at Genesis 1 and 5, right? I'm skimming through it to make it simple. It says day, night, evening, and the morning, right? So it's giving you how it works. You're gonna have a daytime,
Right.
you're gonna have a nighttime,
That's a good point.
then you're gonna have evening and the morning, and then you have your next day, right? So you have to have, you can't just have one. You can't just say, oh, the day starts when the sun comes up, because that's the morning. You can't say that. And you can't just say, oh, the day starts when the sun goes down, because that's the evening. You have to have both, the transition of
when
both.
they meet. So the transition,
That's
and like I said, in this video, we're not gonna get, we're not gonna exactly in this video, we're not gonna get too time specific. We're gonna do a whole nother video on how we keep our days, right? We're just going over Passover prelims and how to make sense of how to keep the Passover. How do you deal with the 14th and the 15th day? Because I know a lot of people in the back of their mind, they're thinking like, man, this, and we've been there. So and we've kept the traditional sundown to sundown, right? And we were earnest about it. You know what I'm saying? And if I'm being honest, every time we did, it still kind of felt like, kind of confusing. Like this 14 and 15 thing, like it's kind of confusing, right? So we're just bringing this out just to touch on Passover preliminaries, right? Passover preliminary revelations, right? That we have gotten, right? And we're just sharing it with you guys. Let's go back to Leviticus real quick, right? Leviticus chapter 23. And I'm glad we're finally getting this video out there, right? Because like I said, it's been, I think, almost over 2 years since we've been keeping our days like this. It's just been long overdue, right? I know we've gotten a couple questions here and there. Hopefully this sheds a little bit more light on it to our women as well, the women that we're married to. Because I know they got questions, right? We live in a community where the majority is keeping sundown to sundown, right? And they would have you think that makes the most sense, right? Just going with the crowd, right? And I want you guys to know, I speak as a man, right? When we came to this revelation, I've tried going back the other way, and it just does not make sense to me anymore, right? I've tried being like, yeah, man, I don't, because sometimes the way we keep it can conflict with some things sometimes, especially in the community, right? So I know a lot of brothers, I will say this, right? Well, I really can say this for the video that we're going to do, but I will say, like, a lot of brothers, usually after camp, what I'm saying, when the sun goes down, that's the end of people's days. For us, it's still the same day, right? It's the night of that day.
Not
but a
even
lot of brothers,
camps, even
a lot of
congregated churches and stuff could go to restaurants and just wait till the sun goes down and then paid in. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So, and I'm saying that because I know a lot of brothers have probably wondered why we don't stay, and go out to eat with them and stuff like that. It's not because of the lack of fellowship, but it's literally because we don't see our days the same. But I say that to say the majority of our community keeps it that way. So the way we're doing, right, it can be a little bit burdensome when it comes to fellowshipping with other Israelites, right, and other Israelite groups, right? But nonetheless, we still believe it's the right thing to do. And we've even beat ourselves up about it a few times, right? So we've gone back to the drawing board multiple times. Let's go to the book of Leviticus 23 one more time. Let's get back on topic of Passover, right? Like I said, we'll do another video going into depth in that if you guys want. But right now we're focusing on the Passover. Let's go in 14th day, the 15th month. Verse number 7. And again, right, Exodus is talking about the live action Passover. When you get into Leviticus and Deuteronomy, these are your instructions for keeping it in the future, right? For keeping it in the future. Keep reading. Verse 7.
Verse 7. In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
You shouldn't be going to work, man.
Right. I wanted to make emphasis on the fact that in the Passover in Egypt, they did not have a holy convocation.
Right.
Right. And then I also wanted to make emphasis that in the Passover in Egypt, it was not counted for or called a feast. Right. It was not counted for or called a feast. They were eating in haste, and they were eating pretty much in fear. Right. It was a feast is for joy and gladness. Right. And there's precepts on that, but this is the this is another point of difference, right? But verse 8, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the 7th day is a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Right. And so this is talking about the feast of unleavened bread. This is going into the 15th day and up, right? Verse number keep reading.
Right. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying,
All right, I think that's it. I think that's it. Yes, 1 through 8.
Right. I want you to make emphasis on Passover though. I want you to go back to if you could you go back to Exodus 12?
Yeah. I wanted to make one more point right here though, right? Because in Leviticus, right, we see that it says nothing about choosing a lamb on the 10th day and setting it apart. I want to just reiterate that, right? Another thing we don't see in Leviticus is what? We don't see being commanded to rub the blood on the doorposts, right? And these are the memorial instructions. We do not see picking a lamb out on the 10th day. We do not see where it was instructed for us in the memorial to rub blood on the doorpost. Why did we rub blood on the doorpost, right? It literally was protecting them, right? Now, when I say that, I'm not saying you can't rub some blood on the doorpost, right? What I'm saying is it doesn't have to be. So I know a lot of people, they just put fake blood on their doorposts. And it was a big controversy, like, now you got to put real blood. If you put fake blood, I'm here to tell you, it really doesn't matter which one you do, right? Because it wasn't even instructed for us to keep it like that in Leviticus or Deuteronomy when it's instructing us for the memorial, right? That was only for the live action Passover. Now, if you want to imitate it, right, just for memorial purposes, that's cool. But it is not required in Leviticus or Deuteronomy when we see the instructions for keeping it for the memorial, right? I'm gonna go back to Exodus for the brother.
Right. And I want to make emphasis too in Leviticus 23. It said at the 14th day at even is the Lord's Passover. It didn't say your Passover, the Lord's Passover. And remember, at the beginning of this video, we established that Passover is the lamb, right? That's why it says prepare the Passover, eat the Passover. Even Christ said, I want to eat the Passover with, right? Meaning it's not the day, right? Because a lot of times when we look at Leviticus 23, we think that it's talking about at even is the Lord's Passover, right? So we think that it's talking about the 14th is the Lord's Passover, but it's talking about the lamb, which was a sacrifice, right? If we can go scroll down to verse 13, right? If we can read 13 real quick, right?
This is coming out of Exodus chapter 12 and verse 13. It says, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are.
This is what the brother Dan just talked about, right? And this is the live action. I'm going to show you guys the transition from live action. This is even in Exodus 12. I'm going to show you the transition from live action to memorial, right? Talking about the blood on the post right now, right? Keep going.
It says, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt.
The
This is
land of
very
what?
specific.
Right? The land of what?
The land of Egypt.
Right? And now we are not in the land of Egypt, right? In context, he was talking about them being in the land of Egypt to pass over them because a plague was coming, right? There is no plague coming for you, right? And we are not in the land of Egypt. Now, this is the transition, right? Verse 14, right? Talking about the Passover. This is the transition, right?
Right. Verse number 14, right? And this day shall be unto you for a memorial.
Right.
And
So a lot of people read over this, but it said after it describes the live action of what Moses and Aaron was to say to that specific congregation, God then tells Moses and Aaron that this day will be a memorial, right? But let's look at how to keep the memorial, right? Keep reading.
Right. That's important to understand, right? So people read. I keep reading. And ye shall keep it a feast to the
And
Lord.
you shall keep it a what?
A feast to the Lord.
This is making the difference. They did not keep it a feast.
Right.
So now he's saying for the memorial of what he's doing today, keep it a feast. Keep going though.
Throughout your generations, ye
Right.
shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever.
Right. So it's a feast now.
Right.
All the things that they did in the land of Egypt was live action. All the things they did in the land of Egypt was required of them to get salvation. This is not required. Let me watch what I'm saying here. To do what they did in Egypt is not required for our salvation today.
Right.
Our salvation hangs on us keeping it as a feast.
Right. As the memorial, right? Let me put this in perspective for you guys, right? What's happening here is the live action Exodus scene, right? In the live action Exodus scene, all this stuff took place. In verse number 14, he's letting you know, right? After all this happens, this day is going to be so great, you need to keep it as a holiday. That's what he's saying. And I'm going to parallel it with this, right? So if you read the Apocrypha, many days in there are acknowledged, right? You got the days of Nicanor, right? Now the day of Simon. Now the day of Nicanor, right? It should be observed as a memorial, right? As a feast day, right? But does that mean that you have to do everything in the live action, Nicanor situation to keep it as a memorial? Do we have to go find somebody named Nicanor and kill him, right? No, but that whole action of overcoming Nicanor was made a memorial. The action of killing Nicanor is parallel with the action of them being in Egypt and having the death angel pass over them. I want to read this one more time, bro, because the brother just made a phenomenal point here, right?
13 and
14. It says 13, right? Talking about the blood so the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are, right? Where are they at? They're in Egypt. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. The plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. This is so when you read this, right, he's literally telling them to do this for a purpose, right? In the land of Egypt. He didn't say do this in the lands whether you're going to be carried to. This is very specific, right? Very specific. Now, where else is the Passover talked about in the Bible? I'm not talking about specific circumstances. No, I'm talking about like as far as the ordinance, right? We know it's in Leviticus, right? Where else? It's in Deuteronomy. What was brought to our attention not too long ago, right? Was it Deuteronomy 16? What was brought to our attention not too long ago was the fact that, and we got to do a little bit more study on this, you know what I'm saying? But at face value, it makes sense. What makes sense about it is that Leviticus is said to be the law, and many say Deuteronomy is said to be the second law, right? you know, just from an elementary standpoint, it's like, so we got two laws, and then they'll be like, yeah, you got to keep both, right? It was brought to our attention. Like I said, we got, you know, I know me personally, I got to do more my due diligence to actually dive deeper. But at face value, it makes sense. So there was a brother. He laid it out like Leviticus was the law, right? Deuteronomy was the updated law before they went into the land where they were going to be at, right? So not only is Deuteronomy more specific in some cases, but a lot of times you'll see laws in Deuteronomy and they're a little bit different from the laws in Leviticus. And it's because the Deuteronomy, but right before they went in, it's a revised version of Leviticus, right? So why did they do that? I'm not sure, but it could have been that they're keeping Leviticus, and they saw some nicks and some bumps and bruises, and they had to revitalize some things and put it in Deuteronomy. Or it's just the way the Lord wanted it to be, right? But I speak as a man, but that is now how I am looking at the Bible, right? Leviticus being.
And another way you could look at it too is, you know, early in Leviticus, they probably were in the wilderness with no hope. They didn't really know where they were going, right? And then as Deuteronomy came, then God started revealing to them that he had a land for them to go to, right? I also wanted to make mention before we move on that we aren't just talking about the blood on the doorpost. Is not mentioned in the memorial. We're talking about the whole act, the roasting with fire in your house, right? The inviting your neighbor over if they can't finish, the getting of the lamb on the 10th
Now
day.
I will say, I think it does mention roasting with fire and all of that in Deuteronomy.
Hear what I said. Roasting with fire in your house.
Right.
Your house, right? Your houses. Keep that in mind as we're going forward, right? Because that's how they did it in Egypt, was each person's separate house, right? Because that was live action. It was for a purpose, right? And it was commanded of them, right? So moving forward, see the transition of how the memorial is supposed to be kept.
Right. Let's see. Deuteronomy. I think it starts at verse 1 here, right? Deuteronomy 16 and verse number 1. So this is another place you can go to, right, to read about the instructions of the Passover, right? It's going to be a little bit more clear because Leviticus really wasn't that clear at all. It told us really the day, and that was pretty much it. You know what I'm saying?
Deuteronomy 16 and verse 1. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night.
That is why we keep the Passover, to memorialize what happened in Egypt, right?
Verse 2. Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God. Emphasis on sacrifice the Passover. They're not sacrificing a day, they're sacrificing a thing. Sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of the flock and the herd and the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name there.
Read that one more time, verse number 2.
Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God.
You're going to sacrifice the day?
Sacrifice the Passover.
Because the lamb is actually called the Passover, right? Now, what should you be doing with this lamb? Remember, right? One thing that at the end of Exodus said, we should keep this as a memorial in its what? In its ordinance, right? And I want to make this clear, right? Because we get on the Christian church for doing tithes, right? Giving tithes to their pastor. And we say, one, tithes was not money. How do we know that? Because in the ordinance of tithing, we see it's not money. 2, we say you don't even, the tithes went to who? The Levites. You don't even know if your pastor is a Levite, right? So therefore you can't, and also it was for them because they did not work. Does your pastor have a second job? Does he go to work every day? A lot of you pastors be teachers and principals and all of that, right? Right? If he has a way to provide for himself, that's 3 strikes, right? And we always say you can't be doing them tithes. Okay, free will offerings, okay, cool. But when we start calling them tithes, it's a different story because you're not doing the ordinance that God has set for tithing. The ordinance that he set for tithing was for the Levites, right? And it was not money, but it was resources, right? We bring that up to say this. In Exodus, it said that we should keep these things as an ordinance as they're giving to us. This is the ordinance being perpetuated to us, right? Perpetuated, or the ordinance that was given to us to perpetuate, right? Salakia. Now in Leviticus 23, there's really not nothing too much that you can examine, but Deuteronomy gets very specific, right? And it says that you should sacrifice the Passover, which is the lamb, unto the Lord thy God of the flock of in the herd in the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name there. Where did the Most High choose to place his name? Right? And some people might watching this might not know, right? But as if you're in the truth, you're an Israelite, man, you probably know that he chose to place his name in Jerusalem, right? And so this is where you're going to take that sheep out of the flock in the place that the Lord shall put his name. Why are we doing this, right? Why did they take it on the 10th day and they set it apart until the 14th to make it holy? Why are you getting this lamb from Jerusalem and sacrificing it in Jerusalem? Because the Lord's name is there. It's a holy place already, right? Simple and plain, right? Verse number 3.
Come on, verse 3. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt, all the days of thy life.
I'm sorry. Read that one more time. I'm sorry.
John. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt, all the days of thy life.
Con, right? So it's going into the unleavened bread, right? You shall eat no leavened bread with it. This is talking about the actual Passover, right? But then it's talking about 7 days after. Keep reading verse number 4.
Verse 4. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with thee in all the coast 7 days, neither shall there anything of the flesh which thou sacrificed the first day at even remain all night until the morning.
Again, that first day at even, it shouldn't remain all night until the morning, right? Until the next day when the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts, right? Now let's get, again, this is why we mentioned the ordinance, because just like we can't tithe to our pastor, right? At Friendly Church of God in Christ, right? At Tabernacle of David, at Beulah Land in Macon, Georgia. Just like we can't tithe to our pastors, right? In the Christian church, because of the ordinance that is set by God has to stand. What does it say in verse number 5? Right? This is very clear.
Verse 5, thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates.
What's it say?
Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates.
You should not sacrifice the Pass. So what is it saying? Don't get you a lamb and sacrifice it in your backyard. Don't get you a lamb and go out to somebody's farm and sacrifice it in their gates, right? What's the end of that verse say?
Con, which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
Right. The only place you can sacrifice this lamb, right, is where? Let's go to verse number 2. 2 again, right?
Con, thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of the flock and the herd in the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name.
So it can't be within your gates. It can't be within your house like Exodus said. Wait, is the Bible contradicting itself? Because they kept it in their house, right? They slaughtered it at their house. No, that was a live action. The instruction for us is that it has to be sacrificed in the land of the Lord. Am I saying you can't keep Passover here in America? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you can do everything that Deuteronomy lists, you can do as long as it's within its ordinance, right? So just like tithing, no, you can't tithe to your pastor. You can give him a free will offering, though, right? No, you can't get a lamb, right? The holy thing of God, right? And slaughter it in your backyard, right? No, you can't take that blood that was that came from that lamb that you got from Publix and rub it on your doorpost and thinking that's the holy lamb. Why? Because there's an ordinance that has to be respected. I can see, like, if verse 5 wasn't in here, maybe, you know what I'm saying, maybe you get away with it. But in verse 5, it's literally a commandment that you not sacrifice the Passover within thy gates. What happens, brother Azrael? What happens when you transgress a commandment of God or the laws of God? What is that called?
The wages of sin is death.
That's a sin. That is a sin. Oh, y'all brothers, y'all just looking at it too hard, right? Y'all looking at it too hard, and it's not that deep. We're just trying to do the right. We're just trying to do the right thing too, right? And what is that? We strive not to sin, not to break the laws of God. So no, we're not saying not to keep the Passover, but what I'm saying is this, right? When you get that lamb, understand it's not a holy lamb. This lamb is strictly for a memorial dinner, right?
And I want to say too, if you keep scrolling down, right, read verse 6.
Verse number 6, it says, "But at the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name in."
Right. So stop right there, right? I wanted to say something real quick. Ropage Green says Numbers 9, verse 1 through 9. Right there, it proves, right, that they kept Passover in the wilderness. It says verse 9 or verse 5, it says, and they kept the Passover in the wilderness on the 14th day at even, right? Wanting to say,
real quick?
Huh?
You want me to pull it up real quick?
No, you're good. You're good.
I might pull it up after we get done with this verse.
Right, but read verse 6 real quick.
Right. But at the place where the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name in,
right? So
there you shall sacrifice.
Hold up. So I wanted to emphasize right here. It says God shall choose to place his name in, right?
Right.
At this time, God had in the wilderness, God had not put his place in a city.
Hold up. I'm gonna bring it up so we can read it. It was Numbers what?
9.
9 and what?
Go to verse 9. Go to verse 9.
9 and 9?
Yeah, go to verse 9.
I can't see the comment board, that's why.
All right. No. Go up. Go up.
I'm saying. Is it 1 through 9?
Go to verse 5.
Yeah, it's 1 through 9.
Yeah, but go to verse 5. Right? Because that's the point.
And they kept the Passover on the 4th day of the first month at even. Oh yeah, the 14th day, my bad, Salakia, of the first month at even in the wilderness of Sinai. According to all the Lord commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel do.
Right. So this proves that they kept the Passover in the wilderness, right? Because a lot of people say, well, we can't keep the Passover anywhere else.
They were in Sinai. They weren't in Jerusalem.
Right. So they kept the Passover. But not only did they keep the Passover here, they kept it as the ordinances and the ceremony said. So they killed the lamb as well, right? So that's what it says in verse 3, right? Go to verse 3.
And I gotta say, Salakia, I gotta stop scoffing. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying these are valid arguments that people may have, right? And we're gonna show you how it still makes sense.
Yeah, go to verse 3, because I'm gonna give an explanation. I'm gonna touch on the explanation of why they were able to keep it, right? Read verse 3.
Verse number 3 says, "In the 14th day of this month at even, ye shall keep it in his appointed season, according to all the rights of it, and according to all the rights."
So when you see the word rights, right, that's going into rituals, right? All the rituals of it, right? Now a lot of people get spooked by the word ritual, but the Bible does have rituals in it, right? The Bible is our ritual book, right? It has curses and blessings in it. right? It has ordinances and statutes, right? But keep going.
The rights of it, and according to all the ceremonies thereof shall ye keep it.
Right. And so now let's go back to what we were reading, right? I'm gonna explain to you why we were able to keep it in the wilderness, right, at that time.
1 second.
Right. I'm gonna explain to you why we was able to keep it at the wilderness at that time, right? Because he said that we're supposed to keep it in the place where he puts his name, right? And the act of putting his name there was significant, right? We know that he ended up putting his name in the city of Jerusalem, right? But the act of putting his name there was an action, right? There was something that was done to let us know that he put his name there, right? So I want to make emphasis on that real quick.
Which is that? 1 second. I'm sorry. It's like somebody just texted me that's watching this, and they had a question about or a comment about they brought up Ezra 6:19. We'll go to that next, right? Because it still all goes together, right? Perfectly, right? So what verse were we reading again? I'm sorry.
Right.
It was
did you go back in the place where
6?
their name? Yeah, verse 6. Wait.
No, I think it went too far, huh?
Are you still in Numbers? No, go back to what we were reading.
Deuteronomy or Numbers?
Yeah, because I didn't even want to come to Numbers. I was just going to touch on it, and I wanted to make an emphasis on what Deuteronomy was saying.
Oh, okay. And you went over Salaki, just to revisit. You went over how they were able to keep it in Numbers.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Right, they kept it in the wilderness, right, because of this. Right, let's go back to what we just read. But at the place God shall choose, right? Go to verse 6.
Got you. Verse 6, but at the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name in,
right,
there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even.
Right. So everything is in context and in order, right? At this point, God still has not yet placed his name somewhere, but where has he placed his name? Right. And I'm not gonna, get all the precepts included to find this, right? We're all Bible readers. We can go and read it. When we go and look at the construction of the Ark of the Covenant, God placed his name on the Ark of the Covenant to read the Lord of Hosts, right? He placed his name on the Ark of the Covenant. So when we're in the wilderness, he had not placed his name anywhere yet, but his name was with us as we were traveling through the wilderness. Now,
you got to think, man.
Hold on 1 second. When we go to Jerusalem, the act of him placing his name in Jerusalem was setting up the Ark of the Covenant. That's how we knew that he placed his name there, not just because he said it, but because we placed and we had a home for the Ark of the Covenant. And so that's why Deuteronomy is telling us to keep it in Jerusalem now, because that's where he's going to place his name.
Look, and Deuteronomy doesn't even say Jerusalem.
It does if you keep reading, I think.
Oh, for real? Okay. What we've read so far in Deuteronomy just says the place. And so, like, when you look at that in the wilderness, our God is so cold. The Most High is so cold, right? He knew that there would be people that don't that can't harmonize this Bible, right, and would call it a contradiction, right? So he knew that while they're in the wilderness at this time, right, he knew what was going to be written, and he didn't want it to be confusion, because the Lord is not an author of confusion. So what does he do? He has them take around an Ark of a Covenant. He puts his name on the Ark of the Covenant, right? And the crazy part is that people that mess with the Ark of the Covenant, they die. Only the holy people could not just of the heathen, of our people too, right? If you mishandle that Ark of the Covenant because his name was there, it acted in place as the temple. And it was carried with us wherever we went until we got to the land that was promised to us, right?
if you can scroll down to verse 12 real quick.
Right.
Wait. Scroll down to 16. Right. Read 16.
Verse number 16. It says, three
And
times.
Lakia, you were right. It doesn't even mention Jerusalem yet. It's just saying the place where God places his name, right? Verse 16.
Because God is so cold. He knows there's gonna be people out there that try to trip his word up. But what happens to his word and his doctrine? He's gonna give us a doctrine that cannot be gainsaid against.
Or compound, right? Verse 16.
Verse 16 says, 3 times in a year shall all the males appear before the Lord thy God in the place, right? In the place which he shall choose.
Right. So he still has not chosen a place yet.
No. Listen. In the place which he shall choose. He already chose a place. The place was the Ark of the Covenant. He chose to put his name on the Ark of the Covenant, and then he's going to switch it. So any place that he chooses to put his name, that's what's happening. Right.
So 3 times a year, right? So when the Ark of the Covenant is traveling with them, by default, they're already keeping the commandment and the law. So no, they were not sinning, you know what I'm saying, when they were doing it, right? They were literally keeping it where he chose to place his name. At the time, the Lord was with us in the wilderness, right?
Man, the Lord's so cold, man, right? Because a lot of people look at that like, well, we kept it in the wilderness. That's a solid argument, right? But just examining and reading what the Bible says, it never even says Jerusalem in this verse, in this passage.
Right. And we all know the 3 that it's talking about if we keep reading though.
Right. In the Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the Feast of Weeks.
Right. So stop right there. The Feast of Weeks, right? That's letting us know that's first fruits, right? Because we know we're supposed to report back for first fruits or Pentecost. So this is Feast of Weeks. It was a brother that was trying to get some precepts together to mention that Feast of Weeks was first fruits. This is one that you can go to, right? But keep reading.
Where else? In the Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the Feast of Weeks, in the Feast of Tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
Right. And so this is telling us 3 times we appear for the Lord, right? And that this is the simplicity of it. 3 times you appear before the Lord. The Ark of the Covenant is there. The Lord is literally with them, right? So they can appear before the Lord. When the Lord chooses Jerusalem in the future, that's where the Lord said he's going to be there forever. He told David he'd be there forever, right? He told Solomon he'd be there forever. So we have to go there now. He's not with all of us in our own gates. So that's why it said that we cannot do it in our own gates no more, right? We cannot do it in our own gates, but where he chooses to place his name.
Right. I'm going to see something real quick. 12. We might not touch on that one, man. I low-key want to
But like the brother Dan said, we keep this as a memorial, meaning, right? When we go to Colossians, when Colossians tells us that we can't judge anybody because of holy day, Sabbath day, new moon, it's because this stuff is, it literally says it's for the shadow of things to come. This stuff that was commanded of us was for a memorial to remember, right? To remember. So just like the brother said, and like we said earlier, it was a feast. It was changed from a situation, right, to a feast. So guess what? You can eat your lamb at the beginning of the day. You can eat it at the end of the day because it's not the actual sacrifice. What had to be sacrificed was at even, right? But the feast is the day, if that makes sense to y'all. Because like we went over, the Passover itself is not the day. The Passover is the lamb. The Passover is the sacrifice. You prepare the sacrifice. You prepare the Passover. You eat the sacrifice. You eat the Passover, right? You sacrifice the Passover. You sacrifice the lamb. The Passover is the actual thing, and it's not the day.
Come on, man. I want to touch on one more thing, right? A brother raised a comment, a statement I don't know, but a precept, a verse, right? And we're gonna examine it. It's Ezra 6:19. I want to bring this up real quick. And this will probably be the last thing that we touch on, just concerning the Passover, and then we'll kind of do a little quick conclusion of kind of where we stand at the Passover. And I want to make it known, right? The brother, right? Not saying he's trying to give us a rebuttal or anything like that, but his text to me was Ezra 6:19. We see we kept it in captivity. Our argument is not that we can't keep the memorial in the land of your captivity, right? But we're saying is what's made known in the ordinance is made known in the ordinance for a reason, and we have to keep it that way, right? We can operate within the ordinance as much as possible, right? But the things that we can't do, we can't do. For instance, in the Bible it says, you're technically supposed to be making sacrifices. We all know we can't make sacrifices right now because the temple is destroyed, and we don't have Levitical priests, right? So we cannot do it. We cannot do that part of the law, right? We do the law to the best of our ability, right? And so if we can't make it to Jerusalem and slaughter a lamb, a holy lamb without blemish, right? We shouldn't be doing it in our backyards. That's all we're saying, right? You can keep the memorial within the ordinance with everything within your power, right? And when I say that, you can have a dinner with some lamb or some sheep in there. You know what I'm saying? You can do these things, right? But make sure you're not, carrying out this act of doing the holy things, right? Like sacrificing the holy thing to the Lord in your backyard. Also understand that it's not against the law if you don't rub blood on the doorpost. It's not in the instructions for the memorial, right?
Even
That
in Deuteronomy 16,
action.
right? Even in Deuteronomy 16, we don't see anywhere where it says to rub the doorpost, right?
Right. That's what I was making known. Leviticus or Deuteronomy does not say that. It's not instructed for us to do in the memorial, right? Neither is it instructed for us to take a lamb on the 10th day and separate it, right? This was all in the live action. This is Ezra 6:19, right? Can you read this for me?
Ezra 6:19. And the children of the captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the first month.
Right. So this is, and the brother is saying, hey, look, this is us keeping it in captivity, right? And again, our argument was never that we couldn't keep it in captivity, right? What's going to happen here, though? Let's read verse 20, because it could be kind of controversial when you read this, right?
Right. For the priests and the Levites were purified together. All of them were pure and killed the Passover for all the children of the captivity and for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves.
Right. So the priests, they killed the Passover in their captivity, right? I put an emphasis on in their captivity, not in the land of their captivity, in their captivity, right?
Right.
Let's read.
I want to make emphasis too before we read 21 that they had priests and they had Levites.
They had Levites as well, right? Let's read verse 21.
Which we'd have neither.
We're gonna read verse 21.
Verse 21. And the children of Israel, which were come again out of captivity, and all such as had separated themselves unto them from the filthiness of the heathen of the land, to seek the Lord God of Israel, did eat.
They did eat. I want to put emphasis on coming out of captivity. Why is it saying that they're in captivity? They're celebrating in captivity, but they came out of their captivity. Why? Because they're still in captivity. They're under somebody's rule, but they're out of the land of captivity. How we know that? Let's get some context real quick.
Verse 22, right? It tells you. Read verse 22, the last
verse.
I'm
gonna read it, but I want to go up real quick. Let's read verse 18.
God. Verse 18. And they set the priests in their divisions and the Levites in their courses for the service of God, which is at Jerusalem.
Where were they at?
Which is at Jerusalem.
Where the Most High chose to put his name. Right.
As we're going over, it says, as it is written in the book of Moses.
Right.
And the children of captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day.
Right. So context is everything. Read verse 22.
Right. And I want to make emphasis too that it made emphasis that they were in Jerusalem again. So one could argue that they were not keeping the Passover sacrifice, right? Because they had to set up the Levites, they had to set up the divisions, they had to set up the sacrifice according to the book of Moses, right? Verse 22, and kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy, for the Lord had made them joyful and turned the hearts of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel.
Right,
You
man.
know that
So
the Ark of the Covenant is in the house of God, which is
right,
in
right,
Jerusalem,
right.
right?
Right. And so when we see this, man, we see that it still is in line with the train of thought that we're presenting to you guys today, right? Because everything has to be in context, right? And everything flows, and the Most High is just so cold, man. He's just so cold. I have one more thing to say. It kind of escaped my mind, right? Um, uh, Dang, man, it had something to do with keeping it in our land of captivity right now, right? I think I was just gonna harp on something about um how people keep it. I'll say this, right? The way we keep it, right? Um, in the beginning of this video, I said, man, as we are, increasing in knowledge, we start to find that this truth, man, especially where we're at right now, it's really less burdensome. Why? Because we got to follow the ordinance to a T. And in doing so, there's only so much we can do, right? And so what saying that is, man, I know during Passover, a lot of people harp on, and a lot of people are very stricklers about, oh, we got to get a lamb on the 10th day. We got to make sure we kill it at this time. We got to make sure we drain all the blood. We got to make sure we, what I'm saying, burn it in the morning. We got to make sure we strike it on the doorpost. And all I'm saying is, man, that is required only within the ordinance. When you live in Georgia, you live in DC, New York, Texas, right? All of those things are not required of you. Listen to what I'm saying. Everything that I just mentioned is not required of you, right? To do where you're at.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, you can imitate all you want to, but don't cause it to be a burden on you to do these things so specific to where it's like, man, and you get in arguments with your wife because you going back and forth like, oh, man, we should have killed it already, or you know what I'm saying? Oh, we gotta make sure we put the blood on the doorpost. Hurry up, do it now before the night's over with, or we gotta save some of the blood and all of that. I'm just letting you know it's not that serious, right? And so when you look at it, it really should be a peaceful memorial gathering, holy convocation, where you're all together and you're just thinking about what happened in the land of Egypt, right? Because that's really all we can do at this time.
Right. So I wanted to make emphasis. This is why when we read the New Testament, we read that we are in a period of grace and that we cannot be saved without grace, because the whole point of us being kicked out of the land was to send judgment on us, so we would not be able to keep our laws. We would not be able to keep our sacrifices. We would not be able to praise our God how we're supposed to, because we literally cannot do it if we are not in the land and if we do not have priests. Right. That's why when the new covenant comes, all the laws will be placed back on our heart. We're going to want to do them because we can do them again, because he'll bring us back to the land, right? If we're not in the land, we cannot keep everything, right? It's impossible. So that's why Christ came to be our mediator and our high priest now, because we have no priesthood to keep these things. That's why he said, as often as you do this, do it in remembrance of
me.
Remembrance
Because
of
he's the what? Because he's a what? He's the sacrificial lamb now. Matter of fact, when you read for us New Testament believers, right? That is our new ordinance. What the Christian church calls communion, that's our new ordinance, right? It's not getting the lamb on the 10th day and all that stuff. Our lamb is Christ, right? And we keep our holy thing, our lamb without blemish, right? We acknowledge it's him, right? But again, like the brother was saying, right? This is why we see Christ keeping it in the New Testament. Well, Christ kept it in the New Testament. He kept it in somebody's house, right? Where was that house located in? It was in Jerusalem, right? Again, along with the train of thought that's being presented, right?
And
This is why, one second, I'll let you go, right? This is why also we see Paul, brother Paul, right? Right? He kept these feast days, but what did he say? I must by all means keep the feast. And where did he have to go? He had to go back to Jerusalem. Why didn't he just celebrate it right there? Where was that? Corinth or Philippi, right? Why didn't he just celebrate it right there, right?
And one may say that doesn't make sense, man. We're supposed to keep these. So this is how you make sense of it all. When we were kicked out of the land for our sin, it was a punishment. The punishment was you guys will no longer be able to keep the things that you are supposed to keep. And that's going to leave you susceptible to what? Generational curses, because you only get cursed when you live in sin. We are living in actual sin every day. And the only reason why we have a chance to be the elect is because of a sacrifice that was done for us, giving us grace because we have a mediator and a new high priest now, right? But according to the law that we agreed to, our forefathers and our foremothers agreed to in front of Moses and the Lord, we are going to get cursed if we don't keep everything written. And guess what? We have not, because we cannot. So that's why we still see these generational curses today. So this is why you can see holy men like Daniel, holy men like the 3 Hebrew boys, holy men like Jeremiah. You can see all of them still get put in prisons, still be put in the lion's den, the fiery furnace, because where were they afflicted at? They were cursed because they were living outside of the land of Jerusalem. They could not keep the commandments.
There's certain things that we couldn't keep. Right. And the Lord's word is true. It doesn't come back void. If we can't keep them, right, we're still technically in sin.
You're susceptible to these curses, whether you're holy or not, right? Because it was a curse that was placed on the nation, not individuals. So you could be a blameless, you could be holy all you want to, right? Daniel was a holy man, the 3 Hebrew boys, the 3 holy children, right? Holy people, but they were still susceptible to these curses. They still had other rulers and kings and nations over them, right?
I got a cool little analogy for you guys, right? Are we done with the verses, the scriptures?
Nah, I wanted to get right before we ended with the verses, I wanted to get Deuteronomy 12 real quick.
All right, I got you. But I'll give you my little analogy real quick before we go there. Think about it like this, right? You're a star basketball player, right? Or a star sports player.
13.
A star sports player, right? And you're supposed to make every practice, you're supposed to make every game, right? You got a schedule. But your mom, or better yet, your father at home says, hey, look, I don't care what your coach say, right? You can make a C all you want to and be able to play, but I say you can't play until you make an A, right? So you come home, you make a C, right? You transgress your father, right? Now you're supposed to be going to the game, right? You're the starting point guard. You're supposed to be going to the game. You're the starting quarterback, right? You're supposed to be celebrating Passover in Jerusalem. You know what I'm saying? But because you transgress your father, you're not able to go, right? Now your father keeps you on the sideline, or he keeps you at home when you should be at the game, right? Now our father, since we transgressed him, he keeps us, in timeout when we should be at Jerusalem, right? We should be looking at like, how if you ever play sports and you couldn't play it on game day, right? That's the worst feeling in the world. That's the same feeling we should have right now, right? We're in the game, we're players, and we can't show up the game day. You know what I'm saying? And what happens is this, right? Like the brother was going into, because I'm the star player and I didn't make the game, right? A lot of coaches would be like, I don't care who you are. If you don't make the games and you don't make practice, right, I can't play you. So because I transgressed my father, right, and I couldn't be where I needed to be, I still get punished for that, right? Even though I was supposed to be there, right? But even though that my father prevented me from doing that, I still get punished for that. Same thing right here, right? We're supposed to be in Jerusalem. We're supposed to be keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments perfectly, right? But because we transgressed, we brought home that C, we were prohibited to play, right? We still get punished for that, right? So when When we try to come back to the Lord, when we try to come back to the coach still got to be like, you still missed the game. I can't play you next game. Sorry. Right? You still get them curses.
Right.
And that's all the brother was trying to say.
Right. Start at verse 11, actually. Go up. Start at verse 11, right? Put 11 at the top.
Gotcha.
Right?
This is Deuteronomy.
Now let's refresh before we read this, right? Is it your Passover or is it the Lord's Passover? Right? The Bible over and over says it's the Lord's Passover. Now, why does it say that? Refreshing again. The Passover is a sacrifice, right? The Passover is not the day, but the Passover is the lamb. It's the thing, which is why we say we prepare the Passover. We eat the Passover. We sacrifice the Passover. The Passover should be in your flock, right? So, with that being said, right, put it in short. The Passover is a sacrifice. It's not a day. It's a sacrifice that happens on a day, a specific day. Now let's read verse 11.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 12 and 11. It says, then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there.
Right?
Thither,
choose, right? He's going to place your name. He's going to eventually place his name there, right? And what's going to happen?
Thither shall you bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings,
offerings, right?
And your sacrifices.
And your what?
Your sacrifices.
The Passover is a sacrifice. So, and all the law, there's a whole bunch of sacrifices and burnt offerings, right? But both of these things are mentioned in this list. What else? What else is mentioned in this list?
And it's funny because the next thing he mentions is your tithes, and we brought that up because everything is an ordinance.
Right? Your tithes, right? So your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, this list right here, we cannot do it. Why? Because it said that we can only do it if it's in the place where he chose to put his name. Let's keep reading though.
And the heave offering of your hand and all your choice vows.
Heave offering or that wave offering, which we see in Leviticus 23 as well, on the first fruit. We can't do the heave offering because we have to go where? The place where God put his name, right? And it has to be by the Levites, right? And we're going to get into that Levite, right? Once we keep reading, keep going.
And all your choice vows, which ye vow unto the Lord.
Right? But keep reading, it gets better, right? Verse 12.
Verse 12. And ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God, ye and your sons and your daughters, and your men servants and your maidservants, and the Levite that is within your gates, for as much as he hath no part in nor inheritance with you.
Right? So we don't have Levites within our gates. Well, we do, but we don't know who they are. We can't set up divisions. We can't put them in order, right? And we need them in order for this, verse 13.
Take heed to thyself that thou offer not thy burnt offerings in every place that thou seest.
We can't give our daily offerings and our burnt offerings whenever we want to.
Hey, that's that. Hey, what elders say on the street? That's strange fire.
That's strange. If you do it, if you eat the holy thing, the Passover lamb without blemish of the first year, that's a holy thing separated. That's like the showbread. You can't eat the showbread, you'll die. You can't eat the Passover unless it's where you're supposed to be, or you'll die. The Passover, the sacrifices, the tithe. This is why we need Christ.
Whose sons were that offered up that strange fire, man? They thought they could just offer up any fire to the Lord, right? And they bucked the ordinance.
Right. So 13 is the crux of the matter of this whole video, right? You cannot do it where you see fit.
Right.
It has to be, and this is the thing. We can make all the excuses we want to, but what is sin? The transgression of God's law. This is God's law. You can't go around this. The only way that we're making it is by grace.
Right. So understand.
It gets better though, right?
Right.
It gets better.
I want to bring up this too. Remember, so somebody might say, well, remember they gave showbread to David and his crew, right? What happened to that priest that gave that bread to David, even though he did a good thing, right? That priest was killed for giving that showbread to David, right? Letting you know, like, that holy thing is not to be played with, right?
God. And like the brother Yeshaya said, that's why we have verses like Deuteronomy 12 and 26, right? We're going to keep reading though, and we're going to get 26, right? Let's read verse 14.
Verse 14. But in the place where the Lord shall choose in one of thy tribes,
Right.
There thou shalt offer thy burnt offerings, and there thou shalt do all that I command thee.
Right. Keep going.
It says, notwithstanding, thou mayest kill and eat flesh in all thy gates, whatsoever thy soul lusteth after, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he
Right.
hath given thee.
You don't have to read that, right? Keep scrolling down.
And the unclean thing, the clean
Scroll
thing.
down, scroll down, scroll down.
I just want to make mention that this is not talking about the holy thing. This is talking about just in general,
Right.
things that are not holy.
Right. It's making a
Anything that
sidebar.
our soul lusted after. Right.
Yeah. It's making a sidebar right there. Right.
Right.
Keep going. Scroll down. Scroll down. Hold on. Go back up. Go back up. Go back up. Go to verse 19.
19. It says, take heed to thyself that thou forsake not the Levite as long as thou liveth upon the earth.
We don't even know who they are. That's a problem. Right. Now go to verse 26, like the brother Yeshaya mentioned.
Verse number 26, it says, only thy holy things which thou hast and thy vows thou shalt take and go unto the place which the Lord shall choose.
Right. The holy things. So the things that we've mentioned, the tithes, the burnt offerings, the sacrifices, those are the holy things. We cannot do that anywhere else. Right. We can't do that in our own gates. We can't do it where we see fit. We can't. So if we do it where we see fit, it is a sin. We are sinning against God. So like the brother Denal has been saying, the things that we do are kept as a memorial. We cannot keep them to the T. So when you eat the Passover, right, do not do the holy things, the stuff that when you see what's supposed to be done and what's supposed to be prepared by the Levites and stuff, don't try to replicate that. That's a holy thing. You cannot eat that. That's a sin. But what you can do is memorialize it or remember it, right? So instead of getting a lamb without blemish first year, maybe you get a lamb that's a little older, or you buy some lamb from the store that wasn't.
Or how about this? How about this? Just don't focus on how holy your lamb should be, right? That's all we're saying is this. Just know when you eat that lamb, right? It's to remember what Christ did for you, right? But it's not the holy thing of the Lord, right? What we're saying to you is that lamb, don't treat it like it's the holy thing of the Lord, because it's not. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just a meal. That's all we're saying. It is just a meal to commemorate the Passover.
Right. And so, and with that being said, right, the brother said, lamb without blemish, the holy things, right? The lamb without blemish is a holy thing. So what the brother Yeshai is saying and what Denal is saying is this, right? When you read in the law that it says the Lord's Passover at even, it's talking about a sacrifice that's supposed to take place at even. So you can eat whenever on that day because you're just keeping the feast as a memorial. We saw the transition from what they did to the feast. They didn't have a feast in Exodus. That was eating in haste and in fear, right? We see it going into the future. It would be held as a feast and a memorial. You can eat any time of the day, right? But to sacrifice, hold on one second. But to sacrifice, it has to be at even. It has to be in the place where the Lord chose his name, and it has to be by the Levites. If you do not do that, that's a sin. So don't, like the brother Denal said, do not focus on how you keep the sacrifices and the tithes and the burnt offerings when you read it in the scripture, because you can't.
Right.
Come on.
And I just want to point out, man, that's why you can see through scriptures of people like King Josiah. He had the biggest Passover feast ever, and it was kept kind of like a party, this, that, and the third. Right. Why? Is because these things are just to remember what happened, right? They're not the actual live action Exodus thing. That's not what's going on here, right?
We fell victim to it too. And you have Israelites always contemplating or combating each other. The Passover shouldn't be a big feast. It should be something serious and something, X, Y, and Z. Then you have some that say the Passover can be a big feast because look at Josiah and look at all these other kings that kept it as a feast. Look, the Passover
It
For
can be what
us,
you want it to
look,
be.
look. When you go to the beginning of Deuteronomy, Exodus 12, it said to speak unto Moses and Aaron to the congregation of Israel. We are not part of that congregation they were speaking to. That congregation has passed and gave up the ghost, right? They were instructed to do something, but we were instructed going forth to keep it in all our generations as a feast. They did not have joy and gladness. They didn't have a good time in Exodus in Egypt.
Right.
Right. But we are instructed to remember it and use that memory to bring us joy.
But by
And
all means, though, if you want to, make sure have it intimate and take it a little serious, by all means do that. You know what I'm saying? But if you wanna make a party of it, by all means do that, right? What we're saying is acknowledge it the way you want to acknowledge it in the most sincere and genuine way that you know how to do.
I
Right.
also want to say too, in Leviticus, right, and in Deuteronomy, we do not see it say eat bitter herb. We do not see it say the whole thing that they had to do. We do not see it say that in the law for us. That was the situation, right?
Right.
When we see, for an example, when we see tabernacles, right? A lot of us, we don't get branches and bows and make our own tents because we understand we're doing it for a memorial. They had to do it actually in the wilderness, so they actually had to get bows and branches,
Right.
right? So we don't keep it. So we can't even keep tabernacles, right? Because we don't actually get the bows and branches that it commanded us to get.
So
And
understand,
that
man.
has to be in Jerusalem.
Right. So understand, just because you go to Camp Rock Eagle, you go to Stone Mountain, you go to the lake, whatever campground, just because you're doing that, you're no different than the person that has a tent in their bedroom, right? You're no different than them. Why? Because we're not keeping it in Jerusalem, right? So you can get on folks be like, nah, brother, you need to be outside, right? You can do that, but at the end of the day, we're all still not in Jerusalem and keeping it. You see what I'm saying?
Which is
So
why
we're only making it the best that we can, right?
right. And which is why we need Christ and his grace and his mediation, his propitiation, his sacrifice. Without that, we are living every day in sin.
By default. By default.
Right? Can you get that one real quick in Colossians?
Yeah, and we'll make that the last one. I don't want this to be too heavy. Right. I know we're kind of unpacking a lot here, but I think it was good. I think it was edifying, right? What Colossians what?
I think it's Colossians 2 and 16. Right? It's a good place to end it on. Colossians 2 and 16, right?
This is the book of Colossians chapter 2 and verse 16. It says, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days.
Right? Let's keep going though. Verse 17 is the point.
Right? It says verse 17, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ.
You know why it's a shadow? Because all these things are going to be re-implemented when he brings us back into the land. So we're doing it as a memorial until we're back in the land. He gives us the new covenant. It's in our laws, and we can actually do these things. It's a shadow of things to come.
Right.
But the body is rehearsal, bro. The body is of Christ, meaning the only way we're surviving right now is because of Christ. We're not surviving by the law of Moses because we can't right now.
Right. Right. And so that's why it's imperative, though, that people understand that as Israelites, we don't teach a works-based gospel. We do Revelation 14 and 12, right? You got to keep the commandments of God to the best of your ability, and you got to have the faith in Christ Jesus, because he's the only one that he can make you whole to make up for the things that we just simply can't keep, right?
Look. That doesn't mean that we're just going to live in sin. Now, there's things that you can keep that have no bearing on having to go to Jerusalem.
The ordinance,
right? You can keep fringes wherever you go, right?
The dietary law.
You can keep the dietary law wherever you go. You can keep the Sabbath day wherever you go. right? We saw it was either Elijah or Elisha, right? We see him even on his journeys. He still kept the Sabbath day. He still rested on that day. It says, right? So the thing is this.
And don't get it wrong, right? Because we're at the end of the video. I don't want nobody to miss or convolute what the brother just said. You can keep the Passover, right?
Right.
You can. We're not saying you can't keep it. We're not saying you can't keep tabernacles.
You
We're
keep the
saying
feast of the Passover.
keep it in its proper ordinance, and don't go outside of the ordinance and make your own ordinance or your a tradition of man, right?
Because the reason why this is important though is because there are actual people that are going to farms, finding a lamb without blemish, and killing a lamb without blemish of the first year. That's literally something that's supposed to be done at the temple. That's literally a sin. It says if you do it anywhere else, right? So that's why this video is coming out, because people want to do the things of God. So we have a zeal of God, right? But not according to knowledge sometimes, right? That once you have the knowledge, you understand that's a sin, right? Keep the feast, keep the memorial, but the holy things of God and the holy ordinances that were told to keep a specific way, do not try to do that, because you're playing with fire there. That's a sin.
Right.
So so like the brother said, disclaimer, if we're teaching that that's a sin, we still believe that we are not supposed to be living in sin, right? We still believe that we got to keep the commandments to the best of our ability.
Right. To the best of our ability. That's all we're saying. You know what I'm saying? With that being said, man, I know we unpacked a lot, right? From the Passover and its ordinances, right? What we can and can't do, how we observe and acknowledge our days, the chain of event of our days, where it starts, how it ends, right? And we've done our our due diligence to make sure this thing makes sense, right? And it sits well with our spirit. And that empowered us to do this video, right? I know this is new to a lot of folks. This the information that we went over. We encourage you to do the same. Study to show yourself approved, right? Hit your books again. Dot your I's, cross your T's, right? Double back on everything that we said. And if there is a comment or concern, let us know, right? We'll examine it, because all we're trying to do is just get it right? And we believe we're in the right direction, right? And he says he doesn't give anything, it won't be confounded or gainsayed, and we haven't found any way to gainsay or confound our line of logic thus yet. So we're gonna proceed forward, right? That being said, man, I hope brothers understand, and I hope brothers finally understand why we can't go out with them after after camp to eat as much as we would love to, right? Just go back to the beginning of the video if you haven't caught that part, and to understand why. But again, man, we don't want to unpack too much on you guys. We'll be coming out with deeper lessons in some of the topics that we touched on today, just to shed more light on them, of our line of thinking, right? And to add more precepts into our understanding too, because there's a plethora of precepts that we have that led us to thinking the way we're thinking, right? I just wanted this to be kind of like a preliminary to Passover and then some of the revelations that we have came to, right? So hopefully this was edifying. We give all honor and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We do so by way of his only begotten son, who he sent as a sacrifice, a holy thing, right? A way for us to keep Passover in our houses in America today, right? With that being said, that man, our sacrifice, said, if you're not helping to gather, you're helping to scatter. You got anything to say?
Nah, man, we just gotta always abound in the word of the Lord, and we gotta always be reading that thing and applying it to our lives exactly as it says. And we can't make excuses to do what we want to do. A lot of times in life, and a lot of times in this walk, our belief trumps what's black and white. And we got to be able to pacify our belief sometimes and just to do what's black and white. And also to not do what's not in black and white. You know what I'm saying? So, shalom to everybody. Shabbat shalom. And hopefully this lesson was not confusing but edifying.
Come, man. Again, if you guys got any questions, let us know, man. Hit us in the comments, the DMs on Instagram, whatever, man. And we'll see you guys next time. Shabbat Shalom.